Hello and welcome to Voice of Australia. It's day 11 of the election campaign and the two major parties are bickering over plans for a special economic zone in Northern Australia. Visiting Darwin today, Kevin Rudd unveiled his blueprint, but Tony Abbott says it's a carbon copy of the Coalition's policy. Joining me to discuss this and much more is the Federal Member for Chifley and Parliamentary Secretary for Broadband, Ed Husic, and of course Opinion Editor Joe Hildebrand. Very warm welcome to you both.
Hi.
Ed, just 6 months ago, the Assistant Treasurer David Bradbury basically described the Coalition's plan up there as wacky. Is this, I guess, a case of policy catch-up?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, the first thing is they have to have a policy the other side that is actually detailed and costed for us to play any sort of game of catch-up with. We've announced something that's a lot more substantive and that will mean something particularly in terms of the Northern Territory and the potential to boost revenues up there and also diversify industry. So I think it's a good plan, but you know the other side, we're still dancing a dance with them to get policies or costings out of them. So
what about the other capital cities? Is this not detriment to them?
No, not at all. I think in terms of what we're doing, particularly in terms of manufacturing in the eastern seaboard states and in particular New South Wales and Victoria, and you look at the pet issue that I have, or the thing that I'm very much focused on in terms of broadband and the way that spreads economic growth across the country. I think these type of plans are important, particularly for the northern part of Australia. That you look at agriculture and the exports and the growth that we can get out of that, particularly within the Asia region, Southeast Asia region. I think this is good stuff.
Is there a concern that you'll set up this special economic zone in the territory, and while the eastern seaboard might not be that hard affected, that your big companies, your agrarian companies, your resource companies in Queensland and WA will basically just hop across the border? They'll do the old, U2, Irish rock band registered in Holland, and decide that they're just going to set up shop, or they'll just burn the house down and set up a Phoenix company or whatever in the NT to take advantage of better tax rates or better incentives, better for their bottom line, and then starve those states out of either company taxes, royalties, all that sort of stuff.
No, I don't think so. I think because very much, in terms of accountability and visibility here, I just don't think there's the scope to get away with that. Obviously it's something you have to be mindful of, but I actually think that people will want to see results on the ground, so I don't think there's that scope.
Is it enough to see Warren Snowden really secure that seat of Lingiari?
I think Warren is a very hard worker in that and has been for many years. So I think the fact that the combination of the work that he's put into his area, plus the fact that this does open up economic opportunity in Northern Australia, I think this is particularly good for the region.
Is there a worry about it constitutionally? Because apparently, and I'm not a lawyer, but maybe you can tell me, but that this couldn't be done if the Northern Territory was a state, could it?
Yeah, we've got a lot more scope to do this because it's a territory.
So is there not going to be, isn't every company that feels like it's got an unfair disadvantage because of some other company setting up in the Northern Territory? And I actually reckon it's not a bad idea, but aren't they just going to be lining up at the High Court to challenge this? And
I don't think so. I think people know, the sort of things that where we particularly try to encourage industry. That there'll be some areas that will gain for particular social and economic reasons. So I don't see that necessarily as something that would be of concern. Because people do accept, particularly with industry assistance, where in particular parts of the country you're focused on supporting employment growth and economic growth. That will be the case.
And to qualify, will people have to wear stubbies? Or can they wear long pants?
Yeah, this is when I heard Hildebrand be on this panel. I felt like I'm in a child's wading pool and I've got a great white pointer next to me.
That's an important economic question.
Yeah.
Well, let's wait to see what you've got to say about this. Of course, we have seen a new ad released by the ALP putting a kibosh on Kevin Rudd's earlier calls for a positive campaign. Now, the series aims to highlight concerns voters may have about Tony Abbott. Have a look.
What are you hiding, Mr. Abbott? I remember when you were really aggressive, negative, angry about everything. Now you've just gone quiet. Talk about all the money you want to save. So what are you going to cut? Schools? Our hospital's already stretched. What jobs are you going to cut? Teachers? Nurses? I just feel like you're hiding things. And I get the feeling that if you win, we lose.
Authorised G. Wright, ALP Canberra.
So I guess who was this trying to target? The food she was making looked pretty good, as well as that
Yeah,
breast in the
absolutely.
background. So
Good solid Labor fare. It's very much the when did you stop beating your wife ad, isn't it? So Tony Abbott gets up, if he's negative, you're too negative. All right, he stops being negative. Oh, what are you hiding?
I think that I've seen a lot of political ads that can be hit and miss. That is a very look, and I had nothing to do with the ad, so I
is it a turning point now for
I think it's a very strong
the
ad.
game?
It's one of the strongest ads, Australian political ads for some time. But it also, the reason these ads have to be strong of themselves is because I think there is, and I picked this up in my neck of the woods, people don't get a sense of beyond slogans what Tony Abbott's actually going to do. His hidden policy, his hidden costings, people can see, particularly in terms of state governments, Liberal governments and local Liberal governments in our area, what they've done, the services they've taken away, the cutbacks they've had. And if you're not prepared to front up and say, what are you going to do? You know that there's 70 billion of cuts that you're going to be making. Where are they going to land? Who's going to be affected? This type of advertisement does highlight it. And I get a sense, we've been waiting for ages. They've been saying for quite some time, we've got policies, we've got them costed, we'll wait for the election, we won't debate before the election, call the campaign, we'll debate. Tony Abbott dodges 10 debates that are thrown up at him to do.
Thank God for that.
And
Tony Abbott, the viewing public of Australia, thanks you.
But these are
That's
the
what
things.
oppositions always do, isn't it? This is time immemorial. State, federal governments, if you're in opposition, you don't have access to the staff, to the resources to properly cost and detail your policies. And I reckon that's true. I reckon they are a bit back of an envelope. But that's part of the nature of being in opposition. And you run a mile from the government because you know the government's going to throw Treasury at it. They're going to throw an army of thousands at it. They will tear it apart and they will come back and say, you've got an X billion black hole.
But Joe, these guys have been saying for ages that two things. One is that everything's ready. Just call the date and we'll
That's also
open
what
up the cupboard.
oppositions do, don't
We'll
they?
open up the cupboard. You'll see what's on offer. That's number one. And they've been saying election now. How long have they been saying election now? Election now, debate never. I mean, they are not treating the public decently in terms of, if this is the most critical period in the electoral cycle, where you're going to have both sides front up and lay on the table what they've got on offer. These guys aren't here, and that's why this ad is so effective. Is it basically targets what a lot of people have been saying to me in my neck of the woods, that they have no concept of what this bloke's going to do if he became the PM. And he'll spend more time in Lycra than in the Lodge.
They're very similar in character. And I think it might even be the same people. Is it EMC? Is it Peter Lewis's mob that are doing these ads? I'm not sure, but they're very similar in character to the Work Choices ads that were enormously effective in 2007. So it'll be interesting to
We'll see the fallout of it.
Yeah.
They do the same thing.
Sure.
There's a real cringe factor. Like, you watch it and you go, whoops, I'd be interested to see how they respond.
Well, Federal Member for Chifley, Ed Husic, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate your time today.
It's great being here with you, Moira, and
I enjoyed it too, Ed.
it's good seeing you, Joe.
Thanks, Ed.